Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Eric. Today I wanted to continue talking about some of the Criterion discs that I own. This will be the last of these videos, so I'll just start now and go through these. So the first one I have, this is one of the newer ones I picked up, a Blu-ray of Thelma and Louise, starring Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis, directed by Ridley Scott, with a script by Callie Curry. This was in its own way kind of a landmark film when it came out. It's a crime film, but it has feminist themes in it. It's about two women who are fleeing abusive men, and that's really what the story is about on a lot of levels. So it holds up fairly well, this film. Ridley Scott's an interesting choice for it, and I know he did the film somewhat reluctantly because they had gone to other directors who refused to do it. Scott did it. I don't know if Scott was the perfect director for this, but he did do it. Clearly, I think if this story were made today, it would be directed by a woman. But nevertheless, maybe that creates some interesting, I don't know, tension in the film where a male director, female screenwriter, working together on the story. But Thelma and Louise, yeah, definitely of the early 90s, a really iconic film from that time. Okay, let's see what's next. This is a Akira Kurosawa film, Kajmusha, also known as the Shadow Warrior. Some refer to it by that title. This is maybe the most austere of Kurosawa films. This was released, I believe, in 1980. He completed this film with the help of some American filmmakers, stepped in like Coppola and George Lucas, who were big fans of Kurosawa, and helped him make this historical epic, which is set in the 16th century Japan during the Civil War era. It tells a fairly complex story, and it's also about one of the important leaders of the factions dies and is replaced by a double, and that's really the basis for the story. So this is like I said, it's a very austere film. A lot of Kurosawa films really let you in and are, easily, I don't know what the word is, easily accessible. But this one is, at least this one, the style is so formal, the pace is so deliberate, there's stunning cinematography, as one would expect. But this is one I need to come back to again and again to get a strong grasp of it. But yeah, this is Kajmusha. Let's see, Blue Velvet, David Lynch film from the 1986, I believe this came out. Probably, I don't know if you call this like a mainstream breakout for David Lynch, because he had done, I talked about Eraserhead in the 70s, which was a kind of an underground midnight movie. Elephant Man came out, and then he did Dune, of course, in 1984, which was famously a flop when it came out. So this was kind of a rebound film after making Dune, and this was critically acclaimed, and this might be the place to start with David Lynch. His themes of surveillance and Americana and repression, good and evil that resides in everybody, and just the most how there's always some ugliness to everything beautiful, and vice versa. So it's a very remarkable film, and definitely a must watch. See, Inside Llewyn Davis, a Coen Brothers film from 2013. Release date on this one. This is a fictional story, based on the folk scene of New York City of the early 1960s. Has a great cast with Oscar Isaac in the lead. Many other John Goodman's in this, and many others who were kind of part of the Coen group at that time. I like this film a lot. If you're a fan of Bob Dylan, it's an important movie. It's not a film about Dylan, but it's kind of about the climate that Dylan came out of. This will probably be a good double feature with I think A Complete Unknown, the Dylan movie. But this is a far more jaundiced-eyed view of the folk scene in New York City, the early '60s, and but also it's about much more than folk music. It's about artistic ambition and not meeting that ambition, and what does success look like, what does failure look like. So it hits a lot of, I think, core issues of being any kind of artist. So that's definitely there. But yeah, there's just many layers to this film, and yeah, so great film. Maybe their best film. Certainly would be in my top 5 for Coen Brothers. See, Brazil. I think I've reviewed this movie before. Terry Gilliam, 1985. Classic 80s dystopian film. You might call it an update of Orwell's 1984, or you might call it Kafka, another big influence on here, but Gilliam film. So once again, a really good Terry Gilliam film. If you like kind of just kind of whacked out dystopias that are kind of funny, kind of dark, go in all sorts of directions, yeah, Brazil is good. Yeah, always a film I like to go to bat for is Walker. It's directed by Alex Cox, a British filmmaker who had done Repo Man. Okay, this might have been made shortly after Repo Man, but this is actually a historical film based on a true story of William Walker, this American soldier of fortune who attempted to start his own empire in Central America. And the film took a lot of liberties with the history, of course, but it stars Ed Harris, and it's just a really made in the 80s, a film about American imperialism, especially in Central America, Latin America, and American intervention. So yeah, a very relevant movie for today as well, but also very much of that Iran-Contra climate of the 1980s. But yeah, I like this film a lot. It's one of those that gets, as you start watching it, it might feel like just a standard historical film, but it keeps getting more and more surreal and strange as it keeps moving forward. And yeah, I like movies that do that. So okay, Night Moves. This is a '70s classic, a neo-noir classic, directed by Arthur Penn, starring Gene Hackman. This is a detective story. Hackman plays kind of a fledgling detective, one might say. I think he's a former football player, and he's trying to make a go as a detective, and he gets involved in this really complicated case. You know, as they say in Big Lebowski, lots of ins, lots of outs, one of those types of cases. And especially in the past like 10-15 years, this film has really I think its reputation has really gone up because it's such a strong statement of the mid 70s of the cultural climate of that time. So yeah, good commentary track here by Matthew Asprey Gear, who I know he's a film teacher, and I do know Matthew, and he also wrote the book on Night Moves as well. So good commentary track, and yeah. So if you like '70s movies, New Hollywood, that era, just one to check out. Next is The Killing, Stanley Kubrick film. This was 1956. Maybe Kubrick's breakout film. He had made a few small films before this, but this had studio backing, and it's a film noir. It's a heist film. It's about a heist at a horse track, and the story is told in this kind of flashback structure, non-linear way. Yeah, but this is Yeah, one of Kubrick's really impressive early films. And I believe this disc also includes Killer's Kiss, which was the film Kubrick made before this, which is also a film noir. And also, I think, a little underrated. Not that Kubrick, sounds absurd to say Kubrick was underrated, but I do like Killer's Kiss. I think that's a another kind of almost like a documentary quality to it, but it's a film noir. But the killing is really cinematic and has a great cast as well, and just yeah. Okay, another '70s movie, Tulane Blacktop, directed by Monty Hellman. This is a road movie. It's about kind of aimless characters in the '70s who race each other across the country because just for the sheer sake of doing it. Great cast. Warren Oates is in the film, memorable, and features two people from, I guess, music or the rock scene. Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys and James Taylor, the singer-songwriter, are the two main characters in this film. So this is not like a rollicking good time road movie. It's a really kind of moody, more melancholy type of film. So be prepared for that, but it also has that documentary quality as well. So yeah, but one of those important films from the early '70s. Okay, yeah, another favorite, Young Mr. Lincoln. This is John Ford's film on Lincoln. This came out in 1939. This stars Henry Fonda, playing Abraham Lincoln when he was a lawyer in Springfield, Illinois. It's the movie, it's John Ford. It takes a lot of liberties with history, probably a little bit more myth than history in this film, but I think it's spectacular. Fonda is maybe the best Lincoln on screen. I don't know. Daniel Day-Lewis, of course, was great, but this is yeah, I like this film a lot, and some of it is based on fact, but like I said, a lot of myth making in this film. But yeah, it made in the late 1930s, so it's definitely to think about. It was made as the Second World War was about to break out, and questions of democracy and all these things. So that's another thread to think about watching Young Mr. Lincoln. But yeah, I always enjoy this one. Let's see. Shift gears a little bit more. Another David Lynch. Mulholland Drive. This came out in 2001. So, like I said, a lot of people, another masterpiece from David Lynch. This was originally going to be a TV pilot, I believe, and it was turned into a film. Of course, Lynch worked a lot on TV. Twin Peaks, of course, in the '90s, and but this was a TV project. But it's hard to even describe what this film is or what it's about. I don't even know if I'll even try. But it's about Hollywood. It's about what does the box say here? David Lynch's seductive and scary vision of Los Angeles' dream factory is one of the true masterpieces of the new millennium. A tale of love, jealousy, revenge like no other. But yeah, it's like I said, a real peak David Lynch with Mulholland Drive, and just memorable scenes throughout, performances, and just very good film. I always kind of pair this with another Kubrick film, Eyes Wide Shut. I think there's a lot of interesting connections between these two films, but this film is so drenched in film history. You could pair this with so many films that are set in Hollywood. So yeah, Mulholland Drive. Let's see, a Soviet film called The Ascent. This is a World War II film. It is about... It's been a long time since I watched this one. It's about two partisans who set out for supplies to sustain their outfit braving the blizzard-swept landscape of Nazi-occupied Belarusia. Yeah, so yeah, a great World War II film. I really need to go back and watch this one, but and the director was Larissa Shepitko. Okay, I know that she died young. Believe this was her final film, but a really good World War II film. Great comedy, Lost in America. Albert Brooks, Julie Haggerty are in this. This is another staple of the 80s where you have a yuppie couple who are both husband and wife. They're both fairly well to do. They have good jobs, but they decide they want to emulate their heroes from Easy Rider and set out and live on the road. So it goes terribly for them. But yeah, definitely one of the great comedies of all time, I would say. Definitely of the 80s, no doubts. But and it's a it's a 90-minute film. It's not a long film, so that's a plus. But yeah, big fan of Albert Brooks, and just of a really quotable film, and yeah, always enjoyable. All right, let's see. Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up. This was 1966. Yeah, iconic film of the 60s. This is a film that's kind of a murder mystery that turns into this more existential movie. It's also set in famously swinging London, as we follow a photographer who believes he might have witnessed a murder, and as he tries to investigate, I like this film a lot. It's very good 60s film. It's only thing that might take you out of it is that the protagonist is very unlikable in this movie. You know, he's not. You're not going to like the guy, the lead character. So that's can take you out of it. But if you kind of let the atmosphere and the themes of the film kind of let them go, it leaves us with a lot to think about. And I think even the short story that inspired the film is part of the booklet. So, or it's on the disc, I'm not sure, but yeah. Also, the music of the time features heavily in this. I believe the Yardbirds make a famous appearance, so you can see a young Jimmy Page perform. So yeah, so memorable film, and shot in vibrant color, just stunning color in this film. Okay, another 70s film, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, John Cassavetes' film. This is another noir film. Cassavetes, I think I talked about Shadows. I have this film. And this is really, it's about the main character owns sort of a nightclub, and he gets involved with people from the criminal underworld, and like I said, it becomes another one of these existential movies. It's a fairly grim film, but effective. That really gritty would be the word for this film too. So a memorable film, and there are two different versions of it, and both of them are on this disc. One of them is a shorter version that's I think under 2 hours, and there's another longer version that's about 2.5 hours long. So you get both versions, which is good. Yeah, another. This is a 60s film, medium cool. Haskell Wexler film. Wexler was well known for his cinematographer, but he also directed some films. And medium cool is, yeah, very much of the 60s. This is what's interesting about this film is that it's kind of a documentary almost, because parts of it were filmed during the Chicago riots in 1968. So you have like fictional situations happening while real things are happening in the background. So really, that's really an interesting approach to filmmaking. It's really about about the media. It's about very much of its time, of the late 1960s. So, yeah, definitely a memorable film. Okay, let's see. Keep going. A few more here. This is two films in this disc. The Shooting and Ride in the Whirlwind. Monte Hellman just talked about his film Two Lane Blacktop. These were two westerns made. I guess they would call these, you might call them revisionist westerns, or more impressionistic westerns that are, well, Jack Nicholson is in both of these. I believe he's the star of one film, and he has a smaller role in the other film. But these are, yeah, just not your traditional Western stories. They're moodier. The pace is a little different. There's a more of an emphasis on atmosphere. This might have been the first Criterion I ever purchased. This might have been the first one. So, but you get two films for the price of one there. Let's see. Yojimbo, another Kurosawa film, great samurai film starring Toshiro Mifune. Yeah, just a film that's been copied many times. Of course, there was a spaghetti western, A Fistful of Dollars, or Clint Eastwood, which basically lifted the plot from this movie. Although some trace the plot going back to Red Harvest, the novel by Dashiell Hammett from the 20s, I believe, which is about, the story's about kind of a lone operator who comes into town that is being ripped apart by two factions. I think in the novel it's more of a labor struggle between labor and capital, and in here it's also kind of a battle between economic forces in the town. So, and Mifune, being the samurai, kind of at the very end of the samurai era, decides to take advantage of the situation. So, yeah, just and it's very pulpy. We don't think of Kurosawa sometimes as being a pulpy type of director, but this film very much is. Let's see, 1984 adaptation of the Orwell novel. Yeah, very good film. Directed by Michael Radford. This film stars John Hurt, who plays Winston Smith. Roger Deakins did the cinematography. A legend among cinematographers. Yeah, a really strong adaptation, and I believe like the last one we've had. This came out in the year 1984. It's fairly loyal to the book. It's very, well, as you'd expect, it's very grim, but like I said, it feels very similar to the book, and yeah, so strong adaptation there. Another Western here, One-Eyed Jacks. This is Marlon Brando starred in this film. He also directed it. This is the only film Marlon Brando ever directed. Famously, Stanley Kubrick was supposed to direct this. He was working with Brando, but they had a big disagreement, and Kubrick left the project. This is, if I remember, it's kind of a riff on the Billy the Kid mythos, which many filmmakers have done, like Peck and Paul with Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and the Young Guns movies. There's been so many different versions of the myth, and One-Eyed Jacks really gets into this. Really well shot. Carl Malden also in this film, and yeah, a really solid effort. Yeah, One-Eyed Jacks. Another favorite of mine, 12 Angry Men. This was 1957. This was famous teleplay about a jury who must deliberate on a murder case. The cast of this film, one of the greatest casts ever assembled. This was Sidney Lumet's debut, and I always think of everybody. Well, Henry Fonda is the star of the film, but I always think whenever I see people who were in 12 Angry Men like pop up in other movies, I always go back, oh, they were in 12 Angry Men. It's almost like a fraternity of actors. Like you can trace a lot back to this movie, and it's still effective. It still hits hard. It's pretty timeless with its themes of prejudice and bias and questions about the justice system, about juries, and all those things. So a really remarkable film. Let's see. This is Asphalt Jungle. This was a heist film directed by John Huston. Kind of similar to The Killing. There's a lot of connections between those two films. Sterling Hayden is in both of those films, so I suppose that connects them. But yes, just a really strong heist film with a great cast. Marilyn Monroe also has an early role in this, but very memorable in the film. So, yeah, just a really great heist film. Asphalt Jungle. And let's see. I guess the last two I have are more TV stuff. So this was Tanner 88, which was directed by Robert Altman, written by Gary Trudeau, right, of Doonesbury fame. This is about a fictional presidential candidate in 1988, played by, is it Michael Murphy, I believe. Make sure I have that right. Yeah, Michael Murphy, as kind of this a liberal presidential candidate who is kind of a long shot candidate, and his status grows. Now the thing about this, like Medium Cool, you have a lot of this was filmed as real things are going on, so he's interacting with a lot of the prominent political figures of the time, make appearances. So it's like a weird hybrid of reality TV and documentary and fictional film. Really interesting blending of genres. I don't know how well this ages though, because it's such of the 1980. It's such of the moment. Some of it might connect for today, but other parts just might not. But some things about politics are always changing, and some always stay the same. But I think this is told in each episode is like a half hour long, so the whole thing is about 5-6 hours long, which it originally ran on HBO. But I like it. I like political stuff, anything with political history, or plus always a big Altman fan, so definitely and you could probably write a whole you could come up with like a whole reading list about 1980s politics and kind of go take a lot from this film. It's almost a bit foreshadowing, because the character played by Michael Murphy has certain attributes of politicians that would come later in the 1990s. But yeah, so Tanner 88. And the last one I'll talk about, this is just called the Golden Age of Television. So this is a couple of discs, and they feature live TV from the 1950s. And I don't know if I've watched all of these. I've watched most of them, but there's Marty, which became an Oscar-winning film in the 50s. In the film, it's Ernest Borgnine in the role as Marty, but in the TV, it's Rod Steiger. So let's see. No Time for Sergeants. That's an Andy Griffith comedy. Patterns. Bang the Drum Slowly. The Baseball Story. Yes. Some Rod Serling. Requiem for a Heavyweight. So I guess this is for if you're really interested in early TV, 1950s TV. You can see which they would do that a lot in the 50s. Have live teleplays performed on TV live, which is extremely rare these days. Occasionally there'll be live, like a live dramatic event, but typically know. So yeah, a real treasure of early television on here. Seeing some prominent actors in their early work too. So, and directors. So yeah, really good. So I believe that wraps it up. Those are, I think I've covered them all in the Criterions. Thanks for watching. I don't know if you got anything out of this. If you have any questions or comments on any of these films, feel free to comment. Do you have any Criterion discs? What are some of your favorites? Do you know, how do you feel about Criterion as a whole? So anything like that. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you later. Have a good one.